So, the topic of today's video is data deduplication in Windows Server 2012. Let's get some simple things out of the way. Deduplication first appeared in Windows Server with Windows Server 2012, so it was a brand new feature. And before this, you would usually see deduplication mostly on storage appliances, storage area networks, different storage systems basically. But Microsoft changed all that by including this feature in a normal server operating system. Very shortly, what dedup does, it optimizes the space consumed by files on a specific volume by looking at the volume, analyzing it with all the files on it, finding duplicate parts in files, deleting all the duplicates, and replacing them with links to that single instance of data. This way, for example, if you have a volume with 10 Windows 10 images, which let's say each image is 4 gigabytes, so you would have 40 gigabytes. After deduplication, maybe you would have only 5 consumed, or maybe a little less. You would not have exactly 4, because also deduplication has an overhead. When it places all the data, it makes a slight overhead, but still it sounds great to me. And because we are talking about volumes, one important thing, deduplication can be enabled on a volume level. So if you have a server with D, E, and F, and maybe you have important data on D and E, you don't want to risk it, you can only choose to deduplicate F, for example. And one thing that is consistent starting with Windows Server 2012 with new features especially, deduplication offers a lot of PowerShell commandlets and is also integrated in the server manager. Now, when you go to enable deduplication, you will find that you can choose from 3 scenarios or settings templates, basically. The first one, general purpose file server, speaks for itself, is when you want to enable deduplication on a general file server with user files, pictures, videos, office files, whatever you may have. The second scenario is for VDI data or Hyper-V hard disks basically. This is a little tricky. You can't actually enable deduplication on a running Hyper-V server, meaning that if the virtual hard disks are in use, it is not supported, but you can enable deduplication, for example, on a library server where you have offline images that you don't use online, that you don't connect to with a virtual machine. And I'm pretty sure this saves a lot of data. If you have, for example, System Center libraries with a lot of images, this I think will be very helpful. The last workload type is backup workload, and this is meant for servers that are configured to have backup data on them. Maybe other servers put their backups on this file server, and you can deduplicate those backups to save, I'm pretty sure, a lot of space, because most backups basically are repeated. So let's talk about how deduplication works. I will also show you a little later a small drawing, a small diagram of how this works. But you have a volume with files. So after deduplication is enabled, it scans the volume and splits the files into data chunks. How it does that, I don't know, but it splits the files into chunks. All those chunks, the unique ones, are placed into a chunk store, and the duplicate ones are deleted. So if you have a lot of files that have a lot of common bits, all those common bits will be deleted. Only one instance will be kept in the chunk store. And the files will actually be links to those chunks. So they will not be physically on the server like you would normal find them anymore. Now, from time to time, the chunk store is scanned and all the chunks that don't have any active links to them will be removed, because sometimes it happens that you move files around, you delete them, some old chunks remain that should not be used and consume space, those get deleted. And one important thing, all these things happen on a schedule and they are actually implemented as scheduled tasks. And talking about tasks, deduplication has 4 types of tasks. First is optimization, which is the main part of deduplication. This one scans the files, creates the chunks, then takes the chunks and puts them in the chunk store, and it also creates the links from the chunks to the place where the files are stored. The next type is garbage collection, which scans the chunk store and deletes all the chunks that don't have links to them. Integrity scrubbing is one that also scans the chunk store for corruption, and if it can, it solves all the problems. And the last, which you would run, I guess, if something is not working correctly or you don't need deduplication, is the unoptimization task. This one disables deduplication, and this is not a scheduled task, and this is run only manually for obvious reasons. Let's have a closer look at how the dedupe process would look like. Okay, so we have a volume, let's say this is volume D, that has 4 files on it. And when you enable deduplication, let's say that it also creates the chunk store, which you can see over here. Now the first thing it has to do, of course, is scan the files and separate them into chunks and find the chunks that are the same. Let's say that this file, all of it is a chunk. Okay, this one it finds only half, and the other half is something else. Good. This file, maybe all of it is the blue chunk for some reason. And we have another file which is found like this. Deduplication does its job. And this one, I guess it's more complex. So it found all the chunks. Now it will put all the unique ones into the chunk store. So we have the blue one. Okay, we have the red one. And we have the green one. What it does now is start creating links to all of these files. So the blue chunk is linked to this file. It's also linked here, and it's also linked here. Now you see these 3 parts, the space occupied is now only once instead of 3 times. We have the red chunk, which is also once, second, third, so it's 3 times, and the green chunk, basically no real space saved here because it appears only 1 time, but it still works the same. It is placed in the chunk store and a link is created. So you can deduce that we might save a lot of space by this not very well drawn out diagram. But the way I like to see it usually is really on a server, configuring it and seeing how it works. So let's jump to a machine and try it out. Okay, so I am on a random server, IPAM01, but the server that I am going to configure deduplication on will be our branch cache server from a couple of videos ago. Because that one, it's a file server, we have already some folders and we can copy some more files on it. And if you followed along with my videos, you should have it also ready. So for me it's called BCM01. The only problem is now I figured out that BCM01 only has a C drive and we cannot configure deduplication on the C drive. So I'm going to go ahead, add a second disk to it. Okay guys, so I went ahead and configured the new disk. Now we will enable deduplication on disk D, but first I want to put some files on it. So BCM01 D $, and on this disk I'm going to put I think a couple of boot images from the Windows Server installation disk, just to have a lot of data that is the same. boot.wim. Okay, we have it 3 times, and let's also put some other stuff, because we should also have other files, not just the single one. For example, a couple of DLLs and stuff like this. But basically the boot image has about 200 megabytes, okay, and it's 3 times, so we should see a difference. We are done with this, we copied the data, and now we should start with the deduplication process. One thing before, let's open Server Manager. I want to show you something, because Server Manager is the tool that Microsoft released with 2012, the new Server Manager, and they said that it's a multi-server management tool. I want to show you how to add a new server to be managed. So from all servers, add a server. Let's search for BCM01, find. Okay, let's manage it, and I want to show you in the file and storage services part, not the disks but the volumes. So on BCM we have volume D, which has a free space of 3 gigabytes 31 and a total space of about 4 gigabytes. And let's see what will happen after deduplication. Let's connect with Powershell remoting on BCM01. Enter PS session, just to make sure. And the first thing, like most things in Windows, we have to install actually, the deduplication feature. So let's install it. We could have done, of course, this also from Server Manager, but come on, where is the fun in that? Now I want to show you a quick view of all the commands available for deduplication in PowerShell. Let's make this a little bigger. And here you go. for such a straightforward feature, there are some commands. So yeah. And one cool thing with deduplication is that we don't have to enable it to have an approximate view of how much data we will save, because there is a tool named DDP-eval which will scan your disk and tell you that if you would use deduplication, you would save this much space. So why don't we do that and see what it tells us? DDP-eval. Okay. So let's see the output. Actually, let's make it a little bigger. So it tells us that it evaluated this much number of files, and this is the space that everything takes up. And the process file size is 617 megabytes, and the optimized file size is 200 megabytes. So this would be the file size after deduplication. So if we would use it, we would save about 400 megabytes, which adds up to 2 of those extra images, because we have 3 images of about 200 megabytes. So this to me actually looks very cool. Let's now go back to the code. So let's say now we are happy with the evaluation from DDP-eval, we want to continue. Well, in order to continue, of course, we would need to actually enable dedup. And if you just run it like this with D, it would enable deduplication on volume D with all the default settings. And it's enabled, but of course it's just enabled, nothing has run yet, the partition is the same. And in production environments, I guess you would not do this, but for testing we have to. We have to modify the minimum file age of the dedup files to 0, because basically when you put files on a disk, deduplication will see how old the file is, and if it's not older than a certain number of days, it will not include it in the deduplication process. Since we want to run it now, we have to set these days to 0 so that it deduplicates anything it finds, no matter when it was put on this partition. So, okay. And we are ready to start our optimization job. Of course, I should not forget to set the volume to D. So this will start the optimization, actually doing the deduplication itself. It started, you see, it has been started manually. The progress was 0% at start. Let's see the dedup status. So for now, nothing really happened. And you can also get the dedup job. Get. And this will show you if there are any jobs running, but I think it already finished, so we don't have anything to see. Let's say again, get dedup status. And now that it finished, you see free space is 3.6. We saved 418 megabytes. And we have dedup only on volume D. And you can see in Server Manager a very nice view of our D drive, the capacity, the free space, the deduplication rate, and the savings. If you don't want to use PowerShell, you can have a quick view in this way, and it looks very nice and clean. So guys, this was it for deduplication, a very quick look and a very quick configuration. I hope you liked the video. If you did, then really like it, hit the like button and share it. Also subscribe if you're not subscribed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.